This video is brought to you by Blessed Be God Boutique, maker of Catholic fashionable apparel, handmade accessories, and more.
I reported to you this past week that the Vatican was having some interesting conferences on secular subjects with secular leaders. These secular subjects we could euphemistically describe as being focused on Pope Francis's massive document Laudato Si, which is about, quote, care for our common home. This has to do with all things green and related to creation. And it's a re-emphasis of Francis's allegiance to the secular authorities and their official narrative about such problems they want us to desperately accept as being real. He's had these conferences pretty consistently until 2020, and then afterwards, because of just how disruptive the events of that year were, they kind of took a back seat for a while. Well, now they're back. And he had one this past weekend, and now he's got another one. And you will, if you're an American, you're going to find some of these names familiar, and you're going to notice an ideological common theme with all of these speakers. They all exist on one single side of the proverbial aisle in the United States. They represent one ideology in the United States. And this is who Francis is allying himself with. I want to see if you will notice something else that every single one of these people have in common. It's not listed here, but it should be obvious. We get our report from Michael Haynes over on Twitter. He is a LifeSite News reporter, and he gives us this. Vatican, California's Gavin Newsom, London's Sadiq Khan, New York's Governor Kathy Hochul, Boston's Michelle Wu, Massachusetts Governor Maura Healey will be among many gathering with hashtag Pope Francis next week at hashtag Vatican for at Casina Pio IV's conference on the redacted crisis to redacted resilience, end quote. Why did I redact it? Because you can't criticize certain subjects on this platform, so we have to be careful. When you look at the flyer, it looks like pretty much everything else we've seen out of the Vatican on this subject in the last few years. And the document is being issued, or the conference is at Casino Pio IV, Vatican City, and takes place the 15th to the 17th of May, starting today. It's happening all this week. Note the 17th, by the way, is the day the Vatican is supposed to issue its new, likely satanic document on Marian apparitions. But this is what's going on at the Vatican, and so I did a little bit of digging, and this is from the Pontifical Academy of Sciences, that the official website, their official website has this event listed here, and we're just going to give you a brief excerpt so you really get what this is about. There's something missing here, and it goes back to what all those other folks, another thing they all have in common. What they all have in common is allegiance to an absolute dedication to what we have to call around here the Moloch ritual. They absolutely are dedicated to that, very publicly so. It's something that even the modern Vatican has said no to, something that will allegedly excommunicate you for. I say allegedly because Francis has given communion to the biggest advocates for it in the United States in the recent past. But bear all that in mind and see what you see here is missing. So this is just an excerpt from the page from the Pontifical Academy of Sciences. Quote, redacted resilience must be built on three pillars: mitigation to reduce such risks, adaptation to manage unavoidable risks, and societal transformation to enable mitigation and adaptation. Such resilience is part of a triplet of interlinked creation crises, that which those who run everything allege is happening, the loss of various different types of life, and, of course, inequality on the worldwide scale. In designing this summit, albeit focused on the subject at hand, we will also highlight solutions that also address the actual diversity of life and, of course, inequality. Particular human outcomes we focus upon are interrelated: increased poverty, the people moving around a lot, and public health, including mental health. Such resilience requires both cross-disciplinary partnerships among researchers, engineers, and entrepreneurs, as well as cross-disciplinary partnerships between science and community leaders, including faith leaders, NGOs, and the public. Mayors and governors form the core of such cross-disciplinary partnerships. End quote. And that is presumably why those politicians I just listed are all there. What that document statement from the Pontifical Academy for Sciences is missing is any reference to the gospel, any reference to magisterial teaching on anything, any reference to Jesus Christ or God or what have you. Any reference to faith is gone. That document there that I just read to you reads exactly like the classes I took on that subject in grad school not that long ago. In fact, if you had presented that to me, I would have wondered where it came from, but otherwise it sounded like something you could have pulled out of a peer-reviewed journal or some white paper from some local government somewhere. It's indistinguishable from the secular world, which is why bringing in those secular figures makes absolute sense in the grand scheme of things. The Vatican is hosting a conference on this subject here in the middle of May to further its allegiance with the secular world. Some speculate that we are now entering into like the twilight of Francis's papacy, that he is going to go to his judgment sometime soon. This looks like more like business as usual to me. It's at the very least entrenching or re-entrenching the relationship between the questionable powers of the world and Francis and the status quo in the Vatican, the people who run things. And here's an unpopular opinion for you here, but if you don't get a Francis II as a pope, you're probably going to get a moderate. And a moderate will probably not put an end to this stuff either. Because Francis wasn't the first to do this. All of his predecessors did this stuff with increasing frequency in the 20th century. It's just how it happened. And so he's just continuing the work of his predecessors on this. And likely, his successor will do the same thing, unless we somehow, by some miracle, get a radical traditional pope who will restore sanity to the church, which I wouldn't hold my breath on happening, just given the state of things. And as we've seen from other news stories, some of the shining lights from the cardinals in Africa aren't actually all that good themselves either, as they have been exposed as supporting multi-partner parodies of holy matrimony. They have been exposed as being radicals on these economic and creation-related issues like Francis is. They just are sensible on the fiducia supplicans topic, and that's it. But that's what we're dealing with today, folks. Francis having conferences with people who are stridently anti-Catholic. And no reference in their conferences about the gospel, about our blessed Lord, about the faith. That's where we are today in the Catholic Church. Curious what you have to say about this, so let me know in the comments. Are you surprised? The names there, are you surprised that all these who are dedicated absolutely to access to the Moloch ritual are presented there, and that they all come from one particular ideological bent in the United States and the UK? Does this surprise you in the slightest? Let me know your thoughts on this in the comments, please, and hit like and subscribe if you haven't. It does help. So to sharing this on social media, that helps too. And as always, pray for the church. I'm Anthony Stine. Ave Maria.